Hello, hello. This is Postgres FM. I don't remember episode number.
74.
Thank you, Michael. And this is Michael, by the way, and my name is Nikolai, as usual. Only once we had a guest, right? Maybe it's time to invite more, but it's a different story. So this is Postgres FM, and we do it since summer 2022, not skipping any weeks. I'm still surprised that we didn't skip any weeks. It's good. And today, this topic was again suggested from outside. We didn't invent it, right?
Yeah, I chose or insisted on this topic this week. We're going to go along with the monthly blogging event, PG SQL Friday. Pavlo from Cybertech has suggested the topic events or Postgres events, more specifically.
Not event queue, right? Not events.
No, in-person conferences, online events. It's quite a broad topic, and we could go in any direction you want with this. I've got a few things I'd love to talk about and ask you questions about. You've hosted meetups in the past. We've mentioned it briefly on the podcast before. Yep. So yeah, I'd love to get your perspective from an organization point of view as well. But yeah, we've both spoken at in-person and online events, both attended and listened to people's talks. So yeah.
Yeah, this is interesting area, which I have very opinionated point of view on this topic. And I think for me, it started back to 2006, 2007, actually earlier. So offline events are fun. They are good, but I don't look at them anymore. And this is funny. Right now we have AWS huge event happening. Many Postgres folks are there, right?
Reinvent.
Yeah. They just announced Limitless Aurora with Postgres support first and MySQL coming later. And people already joking about limitless bills, right?
I haven't seen that. That's great.
See, I have all news not coming there, right? For knowledge, we don't need to go anywhere anymore because internet is delivering knowledge better. And I observe also hybrid approach when we go to offline event, but you consume knowledge mostly through computer. Being at offline event is good to meet people, right? But I still think there should be some new type of event invented to support human meetings, just for like collaboration and so on, not in the form of sharing knowledge like one guy on stage with slide deck, because I think, like, it's my opinion, but let's start from the past, and maybe by the end of this podcast, some people will understand me better. I know not everyone will agree with me, and I also enjoy meeting with people in person, but for knowledge, it's not efficient. This is my position anymore. Yeah, and meetups are kind of dead almost, unfortunately. There are some meetups. Well, yeah, golden era of meetups is behind us, unfortunately. When, like 200 people came and company hosting says, we don't have coffee break supply anymore. Let's close registration. I say, well, forget about coffee. Let's bring more people. And they're coming because of Postgres popularity. It happened many years ago. So, where to start?
Well, you mentioned 06, 07 as a specific point for you. What was happening then?
It was actually first event. First serious event for me was when I was speaking. It was about databases, but not about Postgres. And I was presenting some, I don't remember, maybe my master thesis materials in Kyiv, Ukraine. Actually,
oh, wow.
It was some scientific conference. Actually, it was a kind of not a scientific, academic conference. Yeah, it was some kind of fun to come there to speak. It was very long ago, 2005, maybe 4 even. So yeah, then 2007 was turning point for Russia and that part of world when somehow few things started to happen. First of all, I chose Postgres in 2006. And then I participated a little bit in XML development and visited PGCon in 2007. And in the same year, 2007, we started, one guy actually started High Load conference in Russia. His name is Oleg. I also Oleg Bunin and another Oleg Bartonov. I also met him around that time because Oleg Bartonov is, and Theodor Sigaev and then Alexander Korotkov. These are big Russian names. Maybe after Vadim Mikheyev, who was before them working on Wall. These guys worked on full text search, gene indexes, gist indexes, a lot of such stuff related to performance and how we retrieve data faster. And so it was happening very fast in 2007. I also had my first startup and I used Postgres a lot. And then this conference series started, High Load. And since I just visited PGCon, I immediately invited Bruce Momjian.
For anybody that doesn't know, PGCon is or was hosted in Canada yearly and is very Postgres developer centric, I believe.
Yeah.
So for people working on the Postgres internals itself, it's probably the best conference each year for them, would you say?
It's not kind of best, but it was the first in 2006. So I visited the second one in 2007 in Ottawa. And this year I visited the last one. So no more PGCon, unfortunately.
But isn't it being taken over by new people now?
Yeah. Dan, who is organizer of PGCon, said that the successor of it will be in Vancouver, I guess, next year, and it's different set of people will be organizing. But and the name will be changed to PGConf something, I don't remember. But anyway, my decision right now, I'm in the state we're jumping between past and current and maybe slightly future. For me, I said no more offline events for a couple of years. I don't see point. Last 3 events were terrible in terms of efficiency for me. And well, I'm not complaining. This is my position. I prefer sharing knowledge online now and consuming and learning online. I still miss meeting some people, but I can organize it separately. So this is my position. So back to 2007, we started, again, not we, I just was member of committee from the beginning, responsible for database topic. And I invited Bruce Momjian right away because I just met him in Ottawa. So he visited Moscow, and since then he visited many times High Load. And at the same time, one guy and we were working on our startup together. We started Meetup in also 2007, 2008, in Moscow or Russian user group. I later renamed it from Postgres Russia to RuPostgres when I realized that half of people speaking Russian are outside Russia. So it became RuPostgres. And this story continued for me with some ups and downs till 2022, February 24, when the war started. The war started earlier, 2014, but a new phase, invasion started, and we had disagreement internally because my position always was you cannot split completely politics from regular work, and we need to be careful. The main organizer and the absolute majority of program committee were against me, and we didn't agree that they started to delete my messages internally. Right?
Sorry to hear that. Yeah.
And I exited the program committee a few days after the war started. So, but anyway, the experience I had running these meetups offline, again, up to couple of hundred people, it's huge. It was insane, 2015, maybe 16, when Postgres popularity started to grow significantly.
So were these one day events? Were they evening events, like meetup type things?
It never was more than 3 hours.
Okay.
And sometimes I combined a couple of topics, 3 topics. Let's cover a few. In 2008, we had very interesting event. It was recorded again in Moscow, and after that, I was so exhausted because I thought I'm very bad organizer and I don't understand technical details and I cannot do it anymore. But later, many years later, people watched this recording and said, "Oh, this was a real amazing event." What I did, I invited 3 guys from Postgres community and 3 guys from MySQL community, including Peter Zaitsev, for example.
Yeah.
And we had kind of a battle Postgres versus MySQL. And that was fun, yeah. But I was exhausted. After that, I took a break like a couple of years, no events, and then only relaunched it. Not couple, many years of break. Then I watched how Josh Berkus is running meetups in San Francisco, and I realized it can be kind of interesting again. And then I returned to Moscow for like a few months. Then I started visiting. It was like due to work and life reasons. It was already after invasion of Crimea, but complicated things. But I relaunched meetups there and immediately got huge attention after many years of, like before 2014-15, Postgres was like kind of outsider. It was like you need to prove why you choose it because it's complicated, it's hard to maintain and so on, and like it's still hard to maintain. That's why RDS and other like have their value delivering, right? Maintenance headache is solved. But in 2014-15, probably not only because of JSON, I think also because of RDS popularity started to grow. Yes. And I felt it like this. I need to choose some, how to organize meetup once again. Well, I have some connections. I just ask some people who work at big companies, can you host? We are ready to host because, they want to compete and show how good offices are, because for them it's advertising for HR purposes.
Anybody hiring, it's a really good way of showing off.
Yes, exactly. And you can just use it if you want to organize. Currently situation is different because of COVID and remote focused companies. This is another reason why probably meetups are like declining. We can discuss it a little bit later. So what happened, I like decided, okay, it will be Yandex, and I said, okay, how many people? They said, okay, like maximum 80 people maybe. I said, okay. And then they quickly asked me to close registration because out of, coffee cups or something. Like I said, coffee, it's not needed. We can do without coffee, And then they asked question I cannot forget. They said, this is your event, of course, but can we grab 10 minutes and also present something that will be about Postgres? I said, well, of course, what will it be? And they said, this is how we migrated Yandex.Mail from Oracle to Postgres. And I started to feel like, wow, this should be not 10 minutes only. And then Vladimir Borodin, who hired Andrei Borodin later, this is interesting, just coincidence, last names same. And then they presented it at PGCon later, it was huge migration from Oracle to Postgres, and the reasons were interesting, solutions were interesting, super interesting topic. So I found the gem right away, just trying to come to big company and use their facilities to host meetup. And then I remember in first row, I saw new faces, and then these new faces became kind of almost like friends for me in following years, because these guys worked at large companies, large e-commerce companies and so on. And all of them used Postgres. I was like, wow, Postgres is different now. This return was super successful. So I have good memories. But unfortunately, of course, this political situation and so on, I hate this, we divided right now, and some people work at companies I don't appreciate. Not only appreciate, I consider kind of enemies already, because if a company has any connections with military Russia, this is enemy for me. Yeah.
I think your cat agrees.
Yes. Unfortunately, it's sad, but anyway, this was great experience. We had at some point a couple of hundred people. And,
that's a serious turnout. I went to a recent London PG Day, which is so we have conferences in the Postgres world, and obviously language specific ones that include some Postgres talks, but we also have these PG days that tend to be 1 day events, full day, not just 3 hours, kind of 6, 7, 8 hours full of talks as well. So maybe even 6, 7, 8 talks. And it's London, right? This is a hub for the UK and possible to get to from quite a lot of other places in Europe quite easily. And I think we had fewer than 100 attendees. It was a good turnout, but 200 people for a 3-hour event is a serious turnout.
it also depends on channels you use to attract people. But I honestly think the golden era was when Postgres popularity started to grow, like 15, 16, 17, 18, these years. Now it's declining and people don't see big value coming to offline events because, the problem with knowledge consumption, like learning at offline event, of course, it's good you can ask your question. Definitely. But honestly, you can ask a question in follow-up under YouTube right now, and we will try to answer as well, but in a synchronous format. But problem is, if you miss something, you cannot rewind. This is number one problem.
Yeah.
Second problem, if it's boring, you cannot speed it up. For example, or skip. Right now I'm talking quite slowly, so you can probably use 1.5 speed and still understand me, right? This is efficiency, right? And also tickets cost a lot, right? Usually, like I'm okay. If it's same town, okay, it's good. But yeah,
that's a good point. It wasn't free as well, so I'm guessing your meetup was free for attendees.
Always free. Yeah.
That's a big difference. I would say though, I think there are these. I think you're onto something with the differences, and I would say that meeting people and connections that you make are really interesting. It doesn't always happen at in-person events, but I've noticed when you're involved in some capacity, like as a speaker, I found people approached me, and I had much better level of conversation with people when I was a speaker than attendee to attendee type conversations. Like it's not always difficult to have good conversations, but yeah, I found as a speaker it definitely helped.
Some online events which happen synchronously with recording and then ability to asynchronously rewatch or watch what you missed. Some events try to have format like moving the speaker and people who are interested to a separate room, or virtual room, and then you can spend time asking questions and so on. Actually, honestly, with online events, it's also sometimes good, sometimes bad. Like I had, for example, a couple of hours event when more than 500 people watched me.
Wow.
The key here is that Postgres community, the core Postgres community is quite small. And if you want more people, you need to reach backend developers, like analyst people and others, like maybe even front-end developers and so on. In this case, it can be huge. But if you're just targeting the same people all the time, like it won't grow fast, I think. But the quality of questions will be also different in this case, right? So,
well, there are big Postgres only events. Like the one in Europe I went to, the one last year. That's the one time we've met in person, actually.
Right.
That was over 600 people at one event, but it was 3 or 4 simultaneous tracks. So it wasn't 600 people watching every talk or watching one talk. It was split across multiple tracks. Yeah. And then it was jam-packed. In fact, I was on the program committee for that, which was a lot of work. In fact, we can cover that a little bit. I think it might be interesting to people how those work. But my point for that was it was stacked it was multiple days, 3 or 4 days of 3 or 4 tracks of talks with breaks, with like coffee breaks and lunch breaks, but no kind of like nothing else, no other structure around meeting people. And then I've heard this phrase, is it the hallway track people call it? So skipping the odd talk. Sometimes it's good to skip just for a break, and maybe if you run a business, maybe check your emails, or if you're still working, if you're on call, that kind of thing, just check in, or just go for a walk. But the alternative is hang around and chat to other people that are skipping a talk. Or
right, if you know the area in general, the field in general, probably even if you attend offline, what I think all speakers and conference organizers, event organizers should do is collecting slide decks in advance doesn't work, because a lot of people, including myself, prepare them until last minute. But there should be a way to distribute slide deck, the finalized version, right away online. Like when talk is started, slide deck is ready for sure. So this version should be distributed. It's a simple thing, but event organizers fail here often. They try to tell me, oh, you need to send me slide deck 2 weeks in advance. I had it many times. I never did. and they cannot do it anything with it. Like it's not possible because there is no slide deck yet. But in the last minute, they should collect and distribute because others who probably attending another track, or they're just working, as you said, right? When I attend the events, I usually gave my talk and I never attended anything, honestly. But it's just not efficient. Like I cannot sit 1 hour and listening this like thing of 80% I understand just from slides. It's not efficient. I want to look at slides quickly and then probably talk to this guy directly. Well, sometimes it works. Sometimes it's interesting, but not often at all. Well, I mean, my situation is probably different because at the same time I found myself attending person-to-person like rehearsals or Postgres TV Open Talk series, and there I enjoy. Like I can spend 1 hour diving deep and so on. But regular talks, very often I just see like this I know, and it's like I would just rather look at slides and catch you later in whole, right?
Yeah, I don't think you're
discuss some deep.
I think you're atypical here because you probably know the contents. Like most good talks start with like some introductory stuff for people that don't know the topic well. Right. That's almost never going to be useful for you, but it's really useful for other people. And I personally probably have a higher tolerance for watching these talks live, partly because I know less, and partly because I think there's this. Every now and again, there's a throwaway comment that the speaker probably didn't even plan to say, but just happened to come to their mind during the talk that's not in the slides, that is the most interesting thing to me about that talk. And sometimes 55 minutes of a talk were not useful, but the 5 minutes that were so helpful to me that it was worth it. So I think I
agree here. And if a speaker says like, you can interrupt me anytime, I usually also do it. And this is good. Like,
why does that not surprise me?
Probably, probably we can just cover some additional like deep, narrow topic during the talk, and it can be interesting. I agree here, but anyway, I think it like flexibility should be good here. Like people who want to watch it fully in person, okay. People who want to watch it later, because sometimes Highload had more than 3,000 attendees and 10 tracks in parallel. Almost always I saw some interesting materials in parallel. Like I cannot attend them both. I can walk between them. But they also like compiled everything, and later, a couple of months later, you can watch everything.
That's great.
They also published books. I remember reading these books from time to time. Yeah, you just decode like today it's easy. We have a pipeline for our subtitles.
But talks aren't the same as like it's not the same as writing a book. It wouldn't be a very good book.
There are many goals why you want to attend the talk. Many goals. And if it's pure knowledge, if you want to understand some like other people experience and some just knowledge, like you want understand some method how to do something or complexities, you probably don't need it now, but you might need it later, like in half a year, for example. In this case, having recording, having books transcoded, it's easy again. Like with AI, it's super easy. We have it, right? In this case, this builds value this conference delivers, right? And I remember these books were helpful. I was reading some MySQL talks, which I didn't attend because I was not interested. But now I'm interested in this topic in Postgres, and I see MySQL has something. And I remember there are talks about it. And I just read these materials with slides and text, and you understand. Right? Then you can watch recording if you want, or like you can combine. There are many ways. And also some people are okay with listening. Some people need to see it. There are different people, right? Some people want to redo. Oh, I didn't understand. I want to rewind. What I'm trying to say, offline works for some. Online works also for like some. And if there is a good material and good speaker, today we can produce many results just from one recording. I mean, once time you explain something, and then we have all possible variations of this knowledge, and we can help people consume it asynchronously or synchronously, and in any way, like text, video, audio, right?
I think you're right about different people having ideal methods of learning, but I think there's also a point here about accessibility. And I don't mean it in the kind of technical sense. I mean it almost from like being able to afford to do things and also being able to. Like traveling to events can be expensive, staying can be expensive, tickets can be expensive. And at least in my experience in the Postgres world, unlike some of the bigger language conferences, we don't tend to pay. I don't think I've seen many events, if any, that pay speakers or pay for travel or pay for accommodation.
Highload always did it.
That's great.
But not pay, but reimburse the travel costs and hotel costs just to make it simple to bring better speakers.
Yeah,
so
but not
this,
just
I
better,
think should
not
be,
just better, but also just a wider. Well, I guess that does imply better, doesn't it? If you're recruiting from a wider pool of people, that your quality will improve.
Yeah. Also, I remember that then, PGCon paid me in 2007 to go through Toronto to Ottawa, and it was amazing that I was very young and of course like lack of money, obviously, and this helped me. I always remember this.
So I do apologize. I think PGCon is the exception, or was the exception in the
right. PGCon did it, yeah. And that's great. I saw they did it this year again. And actually, I could use that help. I just didn't use it because already I can cover myself.
Nice.
I don't need it. So, but it was cool to see it was still happening, and I think it's the right thing to do to help people come from various parts of the world.
Yeah, and with the sponsor, I think there is enough money in Well, I haven't tried running an event. I do realize it's really difficult to break even. I think there's money-wise, it is difficult, but we can get.
It's not difficult. It's a lot of work, but if you do it with passion, it's not super difficult. And there are many companies who are good sponsors, right? For example, I don't know, like big events, like some I participated in, 3,000 people and so on, had budgets like more than $1 million per one event dollars. And there are many companies who are attracted. If you grow it, like banks, like e-commerces, like they come and you just need to organize a lot. And this is like 24/7 work for a couple of weeks before conference starts, and you won't be able to sleep if you need huge event. But it's possible.
Most of our events are still run by very hardworking volunteers, people that aren't getting paid to do that work.
But why we discuss this? Once they started accepting money from companies, they should stop saying volunteers. They have money. They just charge them more, and that's it, and deliver better quality. Just do it, or like, I don't know. For example, like, okay, we discuss the controversial topic, which I have very strong opinion on. If you have sponsors, you must provide recording, at least for people who paid, right? Otherwise, for speakers, it's not fair. They come, they see, okay, you brought like 20 or 50 people, but work is so huge, it's better to go to YouTube, and then later people who are interested will be able to listen and see your material, right? So I don't know. Of course, conference in person delivers better connection. I had very good follow-ups, very good. Like they said, we attended your talk, blah, 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 super. But I don't understand why I need to spend huge effort preparing slides. And this happened with 3 last conferences, actually. So you spend a lot of effort. Probably you pay for your tickets and hotel to come.
Hopefully you don't work as a speaker.
Well, usually it's so, as we discussed. There are exclusions, but for Postgres community, normal is. I don't know. I like, okay, this PGCon 2007 was exclusion. Highload always paid. Nobody else paid, usually. I always come just because I'm interested in presenting, and not anymore. I'm not coming anymore, and I can tell everyone. Last year I had rule I come only if you record. Now I just don't. No, I tested once recently with John. It was online. I could come to East Coast, but I decided to present online only, and I confirmed I'm not doing offline events anymore. So what I'm trying to say, very simple idea. You do a lot of effort. You have a break in your work. Of course, if your employer pays, this is different story, right?
Yeah.
Basically, employer bribes you here. So like, oh, you have a vacation, you visit world. This is super fun, cool. But if we speak purely about professional efficiency, like work efficiency and so on, like effort versus result, I don't understand any reason why this talk cannot be recorded, because you did a lot of effort and you want the result to be recorded too. Like, it's super annoying when you spend a lot of effort. You came to some conference, you found even 50 people, cool. But you understand, if it was recorded, maybe a few hundred more from different parts of the world would watch it and tell you something interesting, for example, or follow up, or like you would find more like thinking minds, right? This is why you're presenting usually.
Several of my first, so I was late to the Postgres.
Recording is super expensive.
That's
right?
the normal reason, yeah.
I only have rude words here. It's not.
Can I move us? I think you've got a point, but also it's difficult to. All we can do is ask and see what people do. If they can afford to get some conferences are now saying that these videos are sponsored by this sponsor, so the sponsor paid the money for the recording. So that's a way of solving.
These conferences forgot that this is open source and we should go low key, like simple approach. We all have like iPads or something, and we can record on laptop. We don't need like
high
expensive
quality
production. Yes. Well, it will be high quality. The microphones are good already enough, or you can buy $100 microphone. It's not expensive. $100 or $200 a Rode, like this, like how it's called, lavalier. I don't remember. This you attach them. It's wireless, super cheap. I mean, $200. What is it? And then you don't need to record faces at all. All you need is just sound and slides synchronized.
Yeah, good point.
It can be 100% automated. And then one student, you can pay this guy like $300 to publish these 20 talks or how many you have. That's it. I honestly, like, for me, it's so deep problem.
I want to move us on, but partly to advertise something you've been doing, which is a Postgres Open Talk series on YouTube. So if any speakers out there, I know reaching out to them is quite a lot of work, but if any speakers out there have given a talk that they wish was recorded or was at an event that wasn't able to record for some reason, you'll have them onto the YouTube channel to present and ask a couple of questions. And I think that's a really great service. So if anybody wants to reach out, that would be awesome. We can add to that series.
Yeah, thank you. Indeed, I did it in this year a little bit. I don't know, like maybe 10 or 15 talks. But I found like I don't have capacity for inviting people. But if someone is interested and this is a very interesting material, definitely I will be happy to do it. Because for me, it's actually zero overhead except 1 hour or how many time do we need? We do it online. Nothing like no special production at all. And now we have beautiful workflow, or how it's called, pipelines that delivers very good quality subtitles.
Yep.
Right. We have it, and this like super cheap and super fast, and the quality is super good. I enjoy it. Last time I said, in previous episode, I said begin accept blocks because I spent too much time with Python recently. And this pipeline, because it's based on Whisper and GPT-4 Turbo models, APIs from OpenAI, it corrected me, and in subtitles you have begin exception as it should be. So it's good example, but it's very gentle correcting. So with most corrections, usually when you write a book, for example, and corrector starts to bring some stupid corrections, like you stop it, don't do it. Here it's very gentle and just uses the list of terms we've built and extend from time to time. And optionally, we can have an article or blog post out of that talk. Also, like it would require some additional effort, but I think it makes sense. If it's an interesting material, we can redo the talk if it was not recorded at some conference, and then we can also have a blog post out of it with very low effort.
If people want, right?
Yeah, if wanted, yeah. If anyone listening this is also event organizer, I also offer to cooperate here. We can I can share. It's not like rocket science. It's just AI, right?
Oh, nice.
And we can. We can. If you have some recordings already, we can ask authors if they are okay with it. By the way, with my talks, I usually gave in Russian in the past. There's a guy who just enjoyed doing it and just publishing these posts, transforming recording from YouTube to a good blog post, which was discussed on some platform. He was just enjoying, like he was trying to find good materials and then publishing good article. It's like translation, but not from English to some language, but it's translation from video, audio to text, because many people are better consuming texts. So we can do it if you have a lot of video recordings of recent events. We can transcode them and create blog posts out of it.
Or just get better subtitles, right? Like the subtitles alone are great.
Subtitles can be improved. Or I still think if you had a good event, you have a good opportunity to reach out to wider audience if you convert it to text.
True.
It's text with pictures from slide deck.
Sure.
Illustrations, so step by step, and it's quite easy to read. I also enjoy reading such transcoded talks.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe sometimes better than watching full video because
much more skimmable, right?
Skim through is keyword here. Yeah.
The thing I wanted to share about for anybody out there considering submitting talks to conferences, there were a couple of things that surprised me being on a selection committee. One was that experienced speakers often submit multiple talks to the same, multiple abstracts to the same event. That shocked me. It never occurred to me to submit multiple. I thought, I've got this one idea for a talk, I'm going to submit that. But the problem is, as a selection committee, is you don't really want two talks of a similar topic at the same event. Yeah. So if you happen to submit a talk to the same event as maybe the world expert at that specific on that specific topic.
Fun story related to this. I also usually submit multiple because I know that this increases just conversion. You submit, you want something to be selected, and if it's a narrow topic, maybe program committee doesn't find it interesting for the audience of this conference. So you submit multiple. Because you have materials or pre-materials, maybe you already tried some of them on some meetups, for example, or maybe you have a new version of old talk with better details, like recently with DjangoCon, which I presented online. It was my seamless SQL optimization tutorial, like three-hour tutorial, insane. But it was version 3 already of this talk, and they selected it, although I submitted, I think, 5 materials, as I usually do. Yeah, it's just experienced speakers usually have a lot of materials and they can do it. All Bruce Momjian usually submitted, how? He usually says, check my website, brucemomjian.us/talks, and there are updated talks, there are new talks, you just select what you want. This is what most experienced people do. But let me tell you a short, funny story. During COVID, I actually decided to return to BGCon in 2019-20. But I wanted to visit Ottawa once again. And I did it this year, but previous years, due to COVID, it was fully online, and unfortunately. So I was selected in 2020, and then they selected both my tutorial and some talk. And then I remember during online session, Dan administered everything, he was managing a lot of computers. And then I remember I connect to my second talk, and then says, out of recording, he says, you again? I said, yes, two talks were selected. He said, it should not happen. We have a rule to select only one. You need to fix SQL, which guarantees maybe a wrong group by, or something, distinct on or something. Yeah, lack of constraint, I guess, in the table. And this, I guess I hacked it, and it should not be so. Yeah,
probably a mistake by the committee, but there's a good point.
No. He mentioned that technically it should not be possible because talks are obviously stored in Postgres, and when they select, trying to have only one talk per speaker. So I guess it's a bug with SQL and it should be fixed. That's it. But not anymore. It's no more this event, unfortunately.
Well, yeah. So I was you were talking about kind of from an experienced speaker perspective, but I'm talking about new speakers, people that don't have experience doing this. Try and come up with a second one. No. So as a
speaker,
as a new speaker, and I would encourage people to try it out because I think it can seriously improve your the number of connections you make at an event, or it definitely helped my confidence talking to people at events for some reason. I did actually also want to make an offer to anybody that hasn't ever spoken at a Postgres event before. I know it can be daunting, so and practice is really helpful. If you want to practice in private, I'm happy to be a sounding board. So do message me about. I'm happy to do that.
I think well, I also see that selection of talks just based on abstract is a very poor quality event organization. It should be done with I think it should be done almost always with pre-vetting talks, just because it's mutually helpful. Of course it's time consuming, but it's mutually helpful for both sides. So speaker has a rehearsal, feedback, can improve, and program committee understands better and have aligned content, because usually bigger events do this. Why are you skeptical? I see your skeptical face.
I'm pulling a face for anybody listening. Well, in my experience with the big Europe event, we had hundreds of submissions, which I know I was encouraging people to submit multiple, but 5 or 6 is potentially too many. If I'm just talking about 2 or 3, and you get hundreds of submissions, and to vet, maybe you need a 2-phase process. One is on abstract.
No. It should be 4 or 5-phase process. Should be 5. Sure. It should be, but of course the process here it requires development. It requires experience and ideas, and maybe this is for bigger events. For meetups, of course, a couple of talks, let's go, and you just decide. But if it's big, 500 submissions, so what? You see which won't go for sure, just remove them. It will be already 200, right? And so on and so on. And then you have shortlist probably is 100, depending on how many slots you have. And then you need, of course, several. So for some people, them, they're excellent speakers, right? I don't know, like Peter Zaitsev, you don't need to vet him at all. It's verified. So automatic fast track, we called it fast track. That's it. So automatically accepted, you just need to choose the topic, because always Peter Zaitsev is submitting 5 talks, always, maybe more. Right? But for people you see first time, or you have doubts, sometimes people have doubts. Also funny story, I was vetting as program committee member one guy, and then I asked questions, simple questions. And in the evening of the conference, the guy says, I won't do it. These questions are killing me. I understand I don't understand this topic well enough, but I didn't agree with this guy. I said he's good enough to present still. I asked some important questions, but people can ask them as well, right? Just it's for preparation and so on. It's not just to say failed and that's it. No, we still value. So I needed to spend time on the evening before event to convince him to present. Please, you're still good. So we had another call, and I just said, you're good. I needed to refill his, energy and level of confidence, because I actually destroyed it with. It requires experience from program committee members not to be over, not to attack. It's I'm sitting I'm an expert. I'm going to for self-satisfactory. You're saying so hard questions, but this is not right. No. The goal is not to praise yourself, right? You need to help to improve the quality of material, and maybe to give some idea what kind of questions people may ask. Sometimes you say our audience is, for example, usually very practical oriented. You're from academia. Let's try to connect better, right? And you start asking questions and shift slightly focus here. There are many nuances here, but the idea is sometimes if you're too offensive, it can be harmful. And this is, I think that story, I was not super harmful. It was just this speaker particularly was quite like fragile, right? By that time, in the early days when I was in program committee, for sure I was not, I was harmful sometimes. I know it, but I fixed it in myself. So yeah, sometimes you need to put additional energy to fix. But if we don't have this process, we're blind. Like we don't know what it's like. Maybe it will work, maybe not, and people don't have time to prepare better. They're alone. People always appreciated this kind of process we had. Always, they said, "Thank you." Now I know. But sometimes it was in person, by the way, like rehearsals in person. If it's the same city, we like some people say, "I'm going to ask this." You don't need to rehearsal whole talk. You just say, "I'm going to cover this, that, and this in this sequence," and you have good feedback from people who are program committee. Usually program committee is organized from like people who are CTOs or something, like from big companies that have a lot of experience. So their feedback can be very helpful. Not always, but sometimes, right? But you at least understand what to expect and improve and so on. So I think both conferences should follow this process. They don't. Many of them, they're just lazy. They're good enough, We don't record, we don't do rehearsals, we don't have money for that, or we don't have time for that. Okay.
Or it's different people, right? Like I was on the talk selection committee, but I had no other, like I wasn't paid for it, and it was free.
I wasn't
right?
paid either for program committee. Never I was paid. Maybe we discussed it, but no.
But that's a problem, right? If you're already looking through hundreds of abstracts, the idea of also looking at dozens of talks and giving constructive feedback on early versions of those is just so much work for unpaid people to do. I think it's a lot to expect. The problem isn't we shouldn't do that. It's that we should work out a way to fund it and do it. But on the flip side, I've been at very few bad talk. Like, what's the worst that happens if we give a chance to people
super
that haven't
boring
had to?
talk?
Yeah,
super
that's the
talk.
worst, right?
Audience knows material much better than the speaker. It happens if you don't like failure.
But not
happens.
often. How often?
Quite often. If you
Okay.
and always when it happened, it was a mistake from program committee.
Yes.
They didn't pay attention to it. Like I had it, and I usually visited some talks for control level. When like for high load, I just visited and then I provided feedback. Like this is super boring. How come we selected it first in the first place? It's super boring. And we improved over years and established very good process. And other events adopted similar approach. I know it for like 100%. Like some Java events adopted and so on, and like they learn from us and also developed it further. We learned from them. Like it was mutual process, and
Nice.
it lasted like between 2007 to 2022, kind of like 15 years, right? It was super fun, and I think it's a good experience. But again, now I think, like, it's bottom line from my side, it's a lot of effort if you want a very good quality event, and I think offline events must be with online component, at least asynchronously with recordings. And it's also, by the way, additional ads for the conference, because if you distribute materials with some delay and people consume it even for free, they know this conference exists and it delivers good materials. And next time, probably they will convince their employer to pay for a trip in person. So this is builds value over time and brand and so on.
I agree. Anyway, I think free is great, but even if you can't afford to do it for free and it needs to be some small fee, I think there's also a potential thing to be done there. I think people are willing to pay for these things.
In my opinion, many more interesting things are happening online these days. But okay, I might be returned to offline events in a couple of years.
I think there's something to be said for local events. I like going to any that are local to me in the UK, or I'm planning to go to one in Paris that I can get the train to quite easily. Do you think that's quite nice to meet people in the area that are also working on similar things? The more international ones I think are interesting, and the huge ones I find quite daunting. But I think there are some examples that we can learn from. Like, I think the Rails World recent conference was organized by professionals that were set up and funded by companies that use Rails, specifically to do things like improve the documentation and hold a conference and do things. And
this is super helpful.
People that went to that conference, I don't actually know that it was made available online. I don't think it was, but please correct me if I'm wrong there. But people that went to that conference had such a great time and were telling stories about it, and podcasts I listened to about, like, they were raving about how well organized it was, how many fun things were put on. It can be done even for open, like Rails is open source. There's no reason you can't have paid people doing a professional job in an open source world if it's a big enough community. Maybe that's where we suffer a little bit.
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree. So, yeah. Anyway, multimodal approach is good, like, and multi-channel approach is good. So I agree, they are big events. I just maybe happened to have some special experience in this area.
Thanks so much for sharing it.
Yeah, sure. Sorry it took so long.
No, it's good.
Yeah. Anyway, good luck for everyone who is attending. To speakers, if it's not recorded, we can redo, definitely. I just stopped inviting, but it doesn't mean, just because I stopped inviting doesn't mean we stopped it fully. And now we also have pipeline to build blog posts easily from that.
Great.
I know blog posting takes a lot of time, so this is the way. You spend 1 hour redoing your talk without preparation, and then you have a blog post out of it. You fix some issues, if any, and we post it anywhere.
Although I have noticed a slight trend towards some slightly shorter blog posts. I think some people are getting back into blogging a little bit more, and it's okay to write short blog posts. In fact, this podcast is an entry into a blogging event that is encouraging more people to write blog posts, no matter how short or long they are or how much work they are. I would encourage getting into
Just be careful with ChatGPT for it, right?
Please don't. Yeah. Oh,
Why not?
I have strong opinions there.
Okay.
Well, if you use
ChatGPT,
we'll do that. But if you use ChatGPT, verify things that you're saying in it.
Not each word, but each token. A token is a part of word. You need to verify it very carefully. Yes.
And please verify it before you ask others to check your blog post. I've been burnt by that, and it's particularly painful verifying it for someone else. So yeah, that would be my advice to people using ChatGPT if you want people to keep reviewing your blog posts.
Makes sense.
All right. Thanks so much, Nikolai. Catch you next week, and thanks everyone for listening. Bye.